Hi, Star. Sorry, I had a couple technical issues yesterday, but here is your cosine graph. And I put it next to a sine graph so that you can see the similarities. The sine and cosine graph, both of them are never above 1, and they never go below -1, unless, of course, there's an amplitude that makes it higher. But the normal sine graph, I sent this, I think, last week or a few days ago, or I don't even know what day it is. But anyways, remember the sine is a hill and a valley, always starts at 0, goes up, and then goes down. Unless if you change the sine, if you put an amplitude in, but this is your normal, hill, valley, sine graph. Starts at 0, at pi radians, or 180 degrees, you finish the hill, and at 2 pi, or 360 degrees, you finish the valley. And then it just repeats itself. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down forever. The cosine graph, excuse me for a second, that's my dog. I'm just gonna let him out. The cosine graph looks like a parabola. It starts high, goes down to 0 at 90, where the sine graph goes up, whoops, the cosine graph goes down. So this starts up, I'm going to try to make this a little smaller, I don't know what I just did there. Goes down, hits 90. Half of the downhill part of the cosine graph hits the lowest point, -1 at pi, and then it goes up. So the cosine graph's just a parabola, and it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. Unless, now here I just added, just to remind you of the amplitude and the frequency and the period, this is 3, which means this cosine graph goes as high as 3 and as low as -3. That's the amplitude. This is the frequency, which means this had a frequency of 1. So you had one graph in 360 degrees. This graph has 2 in 360 degrees. So you need to finish the first graph by 90 degrees so that you have another 90 degrees to start the other graph. So this has an amplitude and a frequency. It also, the formula for period, if you remember, frequency is how many graphs you have in 360 degrees. Period is how long it takes you in degrees or in radians to finish one graph. So if I need to put 2 graphs in 360 degrees or 2 pi's, I'm going to have to finish that first graph. So here's my parabola, looks like, or here's my cosine graph, looks like a parabola. I see where that first one ends, that's my period. This one, the first one ends at 2 pi, that's the normal period for cosine and sine. They're extremely similar. Now here's a negative cosine, x over 2 plus 3. This one now has that, it's called a vertical shift, or we call this a midline. Now that means that the middle of the graph is going to go through +3. So I counted up 1, 2, 3, and I drew a little dotted line. That's my midline. That's the line D equals 3. Now this is going to have an amplitude of 2. This one went up as high as 3. This is only going to go up or down as high as 2. But where normally, if there's no midline, it's going to go up 3 and down 3 from the x-axis, or 0. That's why I put this little squiggly line in. That's the midline. Normally, if there's no plus D, the midline is always the x-axis. If there is a D, that x-axis or that midline moves up or down. So this is the middle of my curve. And cosine normally starts up. But this one, because it's a -2, is going to start down. So I go down 2. This only wants half of the cosine graph. Now normally, half of the cosine graph would be a little swoosh. It'd be like a little hill. But because this is upside down, it's going to be, instead of a little slope down, it's going to be a slope up. So this tells me the middle of my graph is at 3, because cosine doesn't start at the middle, I go down 2. I only want half of my graph, that's my frequency. So at 2 pi, I just want half of it, which is normally the down swoop, but in this case is going to be the up swoop. So at 2 pi, I'm finishing it, and then halfway through, I'll be at the middle. So this should look like half a cosine graph. If this was just an x, you'd have the whole graph. It'd go up and it would go down, but it would be upside down because it's negative. This has a period of 2 pi over, that's 1/2. This is half an x. So that 1/2 goes there. You bring it up, reciprocate it. There's that 1/2 reciprocated, and you're going to get 4 pi. This means that if I only have half my graph in 2 pi's, it's going to take 4 pi's to get the whole graph. So that's sine and cosine. Just remember that sine always starts at 0, is a hill and a valley. Cosine either starts at 1 or it's going to start at whatever that amplitude is. See how the amplitude was 3? It starts at 3. This starts at 1. This one is supposed to start at 2, but then it had the amplitude and the vertical shift. So if you add these numbers up, that's your 1. If you subtract these, because from 3, you got to go down 2 and you got to go up 2. So if you take 2 plus 3, you'll get that 5, which is the highest number. If you take 2 minus 3, or 3 minus 2, you get that lowest number, which is 1. But cosine's a little trickier because it doesn't start at 0 like sine. It starts up or it starts down. Normally up is at the amplitude. But if you have a D, start here. Start at that midline and then go up and down from the midline. Down 2, up 2. And that should be your lowest and your highest point. Now that should be enough to do just, I think it was just maybe 10 questions. I don't know on the, there's a Castle Learning. There's only one assignment that you have on graphing, and it's a Castle Learning one. And don't worry, just do the best you can. I think it tells you on Castle Learning how to get what the right answer is, or a little hint. And it doesn't matter how many you get right or wrong, because you just get a completion grade. So whether you get 1 right or 5 right, you're going to get the same grade. So don't worry, just do as many assignments as you can. You can email me if you have more specific questions, or if I can do anything else for you. I did put a Google form up today, and as long as you have a calculator, you should be good to go. There's nothing really to do today except watch the video and, bond with your calculator so that you know how to use that statistics button. Like today's video, just and in stats, you just have to be able to press the stats and work with that 1 bar stats. And there's your mean. Oh, there's your mean. Find your median. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. There's your median, your maximum, your minimum. And, the stats is pretty easy. And then next week is the very last week of material. I'm not sure what they're posting next week, but there might be one more assignment possibly. So do the best you can, and then you have the following week through the 12th, that second week in June, to catch up on anything. There won't be anything posted, and you can just catch up on any assignments you may have missed. Okay, hang in there. It's almost over. Take care, Star.